being on the actual site where the genocide occurred. On arrival in Poland, we became aware of how anti-Semitism is still present today. This was evident when comparing the well-kept Christian graveyards we passed compared to the overgrown and deserted Jewish cemetery we visited in the town of Oswiecim.
The neglect of the gravestones made evident to us how unfavourable Jews still are today in Polish society, and this was furthered when we were enlightened into the fact that even in the early 2000s, anti-Semitic vandalism and swastikas were still a problem on the premises. So from the very beginning of our trip, we were therefore enlightened into how keeping the memory alive is going to be a very important aspect of the experience in an attempt to ensure that such prejudice never occurs again.
Being in the camps allowed us to experience a variety of emotions as we were hit with an unavoidable sense of how extreme and brutal the Holocaust was. Being surrounded by the memory and hardship of those whose belongings were on display enabled us to form personal connections with the victims. We felt this way as we were enlightened by how much we had in common with the victims. We felt this through the belongings we had, such as hairbrushes, family photos, and shoes.
Shoes are an everyday feature of life, regardless of your gender, race, or religion. And we were both appalled that such a necessity was taken away from the victims. So in response to this, we decided to stress how much we had in common with victims of the Holocaust and stress commonality by making a canvas, as you can see here, that was inspired by the display of more than 8,000 shoes within Auschwitz. So the canvas here says, each of these shoes told an individual story of the Holocaust, yet each of these stories and their storytellers have been forgotten, lost in the horror of genocide. Each of us has a story to tell. We must keep the memory of the Holocaust alive to ensure that no more stories are ever lost. So the image in the centre is a picture of the display of shoes in Auschwitz. And then we have pupils and teachers from the school holding their shoes to stress how much in common and how anybody could have been a victim of the Holocaust. And there's a variety of ages and genders and races to stress that even more so.
One of the most striking things we encountered in Auschwitz that we've taken away from it was how the Nazis went beyond mass murder and stooped to dehumanization. The most memorable example of this we came across was the display of hair. This site evoked much sympathy from us because not only is hair something personal, but according to the Jewish faith, it should be buried with the bodies. This sympathy was heightened when we were informed that it was common for the Nazis to sell the victims' hair to companies as materials for many purposes, such as the production of carpets and stiff collars.
In contrast to the Nazis' desire to dehumanize, today in Auschwitz-Birkenau, they stress how the victims of the Holocaust were just normal human beings like you and I. They do this by ending the tour in a room that is filled with hundreds of photographs of the victims and their friends and families that were rescued from prisoners' luggage. In these images, it shows friends and families who look normal, just experiencing normal happiness. And this put innocent faces to the severe suffering that we had become aware of during our trip. And consequently, we left Poland both very passionate about spreading the vital knowledge that we had learned from our Holocaust experience.
Our desire to ensure such atrocities never occur again were emphasised by a rabbi who spoke to us at the end of our visit about his views on the Holocaust. He also informed us how a few weeks prior to our visit in September, he had been subjected to Nazi supporters protesting outside his synagogue in London saying Hitler was right. This, combined with current events of religious and racial hatred in Europe and across the world, makes it incredibly evident that prejudice is still a prominent problem in